Okay? Okay, I'm opening the Board of Selectmen's meeting. It is the first day of spring, March 21st, 2018. If we could all stand and pledge allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We have a abbreviated agenda tonight because we wanted to devote considerable time to discussing the annual town warrant. The board, along with town manager, will be going through all the articles and we'll be having discussion. To be transparent, most of us have already gone through most of this and had discussion with the town manager, but this is the public format to do so. First, and then after that, the board will be going in executive session under Mass General Law, Chapter 30, Section 21, Exception Number 3, to discuss strategy sessions with respect to collective bargaining. If the chair declares an open meeting will have a detrimental effect on the town's bargaining position. At the conclusion of the executive session, the board will reconvene only for purposes of adjournment. So first on the agenda, we will dispense with the motion to accept minutes of March 6th. We'll do that at the next meeting. I was not at that meeting, but we've been asked to hold off on that. And before we begin going into the warrant itself, I'll turn it over to the town manager. You have a couple of things?
Sure.
Besides warning of snow?
That's right, snow is coming.
Again.
Yeah, I'd like to talk for a few minutes about something that has been front and center since the day I started last summer, the issue of double poles here in town. In particular, there have been some community residents, Mr. Rackerton being one of them, who was working with the previous town manager and the interim town manager to try to get some resolution to removing these double poles from town. So I'd have to say it's been very challenging over the last 8 months to try to understand the issue of double poles and work with the utilities on this, and have reached out on multiple occasions to Verizon to assist us, and really wasn't getting any cooperation at all, let alone even a response from them. So after a little bit of research, I worked with National Grid and found that National Grid's job in town is to install the new pole, and it's Verizon's job to remove the old pole. So that being said, we circled back to Verizon, still didn't get a response. And at our last meeting, we had Representative Meridian and Senator Moore, who I shared this same story with in my challenges with working with Verizon. That being said, I'm happy to report, and I want to publicly thank Representative Meridian and Senator Moore for their great work on this. I received a phone call less than a week later from Verizon, and I met with Verizon yesterday, and they have committed to this town. They said their regional manager is committed to Upton. They expect, weather dependent, to be in town within 2 weeks with crews. They have identified 50 poles that need to be removed. 33 of them can be removed right away, meaning the last line is Verizon's line to unhitch and then remove the pole. So I would expect within the next 2 to 3 weeks that we see Verizon contractors here in town removing at least 33 poles in this community. So I'm happy to report that.
Great. Not to put you on the spot, but we all know that we're expecting another snowstorm, and there's even an indication of one to follow that. Can you give us an update somewhat where we are on the expenditure for the snow removal budget?
Sure, yeah. Again, we've had a trying winter season. We started out in December. I think by the end of December, we had already reached over a dozen storms. As you know, we've had 3 nor'easters since. We're expecting the 4th nor'easter tomorrow. Right now, as it stands, and again, these are very conservative numbers. I'd expect them to be much higher after tomorrow's storm and this coming Sunday storm. We're at $340,000 right now. We budget for $230,000, so we're already $110,000 over. I'll be honest, I think we'll probably be in the $400,000 range by the time we have to go to town meeting and request additional funds. I was watching a report this past weekend about the snowfall counts here in Massachusetts, and in particular they compared Worcester and Boston. Worcester's had 88 inches of snow, has already hit the ground, 88, 82, somewhere in there. They typically average about 55 inches of snow. So they're already 50% above their snowfall count. And Boston's the same. Certainly doesn't see quite as much snow as Worcester does, but they've already seen about a 50% uptick in their average seasonal snowfall amounts. So I say that only because we need to be real with each other and understand that this year has been very challenging with not only the snowfall counts, but we put a lot of material on the streets in the early part of this winter because the vast majority of our response to these conditions was ice related. So again, we spent a lot of material this year on salt and sand. So 340 to summarize, I expect that we'll be closer to 400 by the time we get to town meeting.
Okay. Well, one thing's for certain, and I travel a lot throughout the Commonwealth. I get to see a lot of cities and towns, and I do stand with pride on the way that our DPW and all the employees that work for the town maintain our roads. I mean, I leave in the mornings and the roads are clear, and that means they've been out all night, so kudos to them. And at some point, when the season finally ends and there is a little bit of spring, we should bring them in and acknowledge what they've done.
Yeah,
I think they deserve that credit, so. Okay, if there are no further questions, gentlemen, okay to go on the warrant? All right, what I'd like to do is I will basically cite the article, give a quick overview what it pertains to, open it up to debate, and anybody, many times I'll defer to the town manager because he is responsible for the coordination and putting this together. So Article 1 is obviously just part of the town meeting process of the election more than anything else. Article 2 is to fix salaries and compensation of employees. That's just another process. Article 3 is to appropriate from the enterprise account for water enterprise. And Derek, I'll turn this one over to you. There's a lot of numbers here that confuse the general population, but if you can kind of just give an overview of what this really relates to.
Sure, so we have two enterprise accounts. We have a water enterprise account and a wastewater enterprise account. The vast majority of the costs associated with running our water infrastructure and our wastewater infrastructure are paid by user fees, for example. And so what you see here in front of you are the breakdown of the wages and salaries for those men and women that work for the water division, the operating expenses that are associated with that, and then the capital outlay. And we continue to work on our water infrastructure on an annual basis. There's a plan to replace water mains. In fact, we will be replacing the water main on Hartford Ave North this coming summer. Right now, we appropriated $1.3 million. We're going to borrow, and we're hoping the project lands around $1 million, so $300,000 savings there. And the reason why I bring that up is because you see that the next item is debt. And so there's a debt payment that has to be made for any time we take out infrastructure improvement costs. And then we also keep a line item for unforeseen circumstances that may happen. Maybe we have a water main break that we didn't have money set aside for, or what has happened most recently where we have to implement something known as a four-log system over at the West River water tank so that we can properly chlorinate it to get that water tank back online. Those types of unforeseen circumstances, we would use this line item to try to respond to. You can see the next line is the department receipts. That number's going to change. That number is actually going to be 864,200. That is the revenues that we bring in to help pay the costs associated with running the enterprise account, and then we can also put any retained earnings. So if we bring in additional dollars beyond what we anticipate for revenue, we put them in retained earnings, and we can use those retained earnings to help cover the associated operating costs. Lastly, the town has committed to offsetting 50% of the infrastructure costs, but by using tax levy dollars. So you'll see under the revenue side of the house, $167,000 of revenue generated from the tax levy.
Any questions? The 50% tax levy, at some point, that number was supposed to be dissolved and totally supported through the enterprise itself and not put the burden on the users. General population is paying for basically a water supply. Now, we knew when we established the enterprise accounts that it couldn't self-sustain itself, but there was, we had some form of a timeline, as I remember, and I don't want to hold anybody to a number, but we did have a timeline where that would eventually dissolve and it would be totally self-supporting. So, you know, gentlemen, candidly, I'm not going to be here, but I'd like to see that number get to the point where the enterprise account itself absorbs all costs and takes it off the burden of general taxation.
Yes.
You know, I'm one of those lucky ones that has my own well and own septic tank, so it's same with wastewater, I'm supplementing that, and at some point, I think the users should be totally responsible for it. So I just bring that up, because that was a plan when it was, I'm gonna say 12 years ago when we started the enterprise, and of course, nothing gets built in a day, it takes time, but over time, that number should go down.
Yeah, I wonder if it's a situation where the more percentage of users we get on it would help bring that to a zero impact on all tax users?
Yeah, certainly as we increase the number of users, you know, that's gonna help bring in additional revenues. But at the same time, again, this is, this line item from tax levy, it funds 50% of our debt payment. So as that debt comes off, we would expect to see that number come down.
So that's my only point, we want to see that, yeah, right. So, but the point is, if we increase debt in the future, add more debt, we don't want to have it based, in other words, we don't want to have that carried over to general taxation. Any future debt should be solely on the enterprise itself. That's all. That was my only
You
comment.
know how they came up with that 50% number, Bob?
It was done at town meeting. Actually, it was an amendment to a motion I remember somebody made. Initially, it was higher than that, and someone amended it to 50%. And I'm going back 10, 12 years ago.
Is it about, you think it's time to amend it again to a lower percentage?
Well, I think, to town manager's point, once the debt gets paid off, that levy's gonna go away to general taxation. My only concern is I didn't want more debt put on and keep that 50% to taxation. That's not fair. That was the only, yeah.
Especially, you know, we have a large capital project with that water main on North Main Street, so that might be something that we need to discuss sooner rather than later. Because obviously, after that's constructed, we'll see the actual impact of making that payment. So it might be a time where maybe that money specifically should go directly to the users.
Sure, that's a great point. And so I'm working with the treasurer collector on what that debt payment's gonna look like in 2019. So we expect to go and borrow approximately $1 million to fund that project. The current philosophy or strategy would be to potentially take out a State House note and then just pay the interest this year. And then over time, as this other debt comes off, use the debt that's coming off and replace it with this new debt that's coming up. So I guess my point is, we'd like to talk about this strategy at the joint meeting next Wednesday with FinCom, how we want to appropriate those dollars.
Yep, that's fair. Okay. The next article is wastewater. It's pretty much identical to water. The only difference is wastewater, we have different level of users, but water is what, 2 to 1 to wastewater, I think. So pretty much close to 3 to 1, yeah. So, but wastewater is the same way, and we are paying through the tax levy to reduce the debt level. So, are there any questions on that one?
No, sir.
No?
nothing.
Okay. Article 6 is FinCom Reserve Fund. That's to appropriate money for the FinCom to vote as necessary. $25,000, that's an annual stipend to them. You're looking at me.
Oh, you missed 5.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, it's right in front of me, excuse me. Yes, Article number 5, That one's to approve spending limits for boards and commissions. That's a revolving account. Basically, these are accounts that process every year, and we used to do them individually, and now what we've simply done is push them all together. They are standard operating procedures every year that take place, and most of them revolve around, double terminology, revolve around revolving accounts, and just different trust funds where lands are appropriated, funds are appropriated to.
There's one slight modification. When Kenny, our town accountant, was reviewing the numbers, based upon prior year's experience with the Recreation Commission line item, he's recommending moving that from 169 to 200,000.
And before people get nervous, that doesn't mean we're raising $200,000. That's simply, that authorizes the RecCom to take from their revolving account up to $200,000 through town meeting vote. And again, I keep preaching this, but nothing happens without town meeting vote. And as I said to someone earlier today, at the last town meeting, we had 0.5% of the voting population show up to that meeting. And they vote $25+ million. So, anyway, I made my speech. Okay, anything beyond that, gentlemen?
Just a quick question, what is the reasoning, or what is their explanation as to why they want to move that number to 200?
It's based upon prior spending experience that they've been pushing over 169 last couple of years. And so this line item, they can only spend up to that number. And so if they do go over it, then they need further town meeting action. And so Kenny has reviewed their expenditures in the past and said that they really need to be closer to 200,000.
Do we know what they bring in?
I don't, I can find out.
Okay, I moved to number 6, and that's the one I had previously mentioned, the FinCom reserve account. Gives the FinCom $25,000, and through a vote of the Finance Committee, they can deal with short-term expenditures that may arise throughout the year. Article 7 is the employee pension regional retirement system. That's an obligation to the town. It's $564,142, and that's basically what you call non-negotiable. I still remember a number that town manager said in his interview process, and kudos for doing the research, but 11% of our budget can be affected. That means 89, almost 90% of the budget is fixed. So that deals with union contracts, compensation, health insurance, et cetera. Article 8 is an annual road appropriation from the state, Chapter 90 funds. It authorizes the town to accept the money from state for Chapter 90. Do we have that amount or an idea of what that will be this year? It's usually
around 340.
yeah, it's usually the same.
360. It's in that.
Okay.
ballpark.
I think last year was on line item at 318, so I'm not sure if it will go up this year or not.
Yeah, I
I
have
think
it here.
340 rings a bell.
I have it.
I think the
Right.
actual was 314.7, but I think the original appropriation was 318. Unless that's subject to change this year.
I thought I had it.
And going back briefly to Article 7 while we have a minute, that's a number that unfortunately keeps going up every year. That was in the 400,000s a few years ago, 511 last year. Now this year, 564,142.
And it will go up every year.
It will, unfortunately. that
More
will
employees, more
increase.
salary, more compensation, more benefits, yeah. Okay,
I don't have it, I thought.
that's all right, we can come back and address it. So, that was Article 8, the annual Chapter 90 appropriation. No questions on that, right? We're pretty much at what the state provides us. Article 9 is to assist in that endeavor, $530,000 article to add to the Chapter 90 funds to upgrade our road system. Our road system fell behind, unfortunately, and when times get tough, we tend to take money from infrastructure, and the roads were impacted by that. Our management plan, our road management factor went from roughly 8-point-something down to 7-point-something, which indicates our roads are losing value instead of gaining. So we want to try and get back on track. I think the last number I heard is like $270 a foot of road repair, so it's very expensive. And that doesn't necessarily involve all the other upgrades, sewer, catch basin, and so forth.
Yeah, if we had to do full depth reclamation, 1 mile equates to $1 million for
Okay.
full depth
Yep.
reclamation. So the money doesn't go as far as we think it
No,
does.
no. And we have, 78 miles of road surface in this town, so, yeah. Okay, any questions on that one?
No, sir.
Okay. Article 10, the dollar amount is still not fixed. That's, as mentioned earlier, snow and ice removal. We won't know that until the storms have passed and we have a number. And as you mentioned, it's closer to 400,000, right?
That's what I think it's gonna be.
Regretfully, so that's almost double. Ouch. Okay, Article 11, that's 15,000. The Board of Assessors are asking for tax title, not Board of Assessors, Treasurer Collector for tax title collection, revolving account, and he's not here. I don't want to put words in his mouth, but it's relative to tax takings, redemptions, and foreclosures, and the funding for that. Any questions?
No.
No, okay. Article 12, this is $100,000. As we know, the town's obligation is estimated to be $6 million for retirement, and that's basically other unanticipated employee benefits for retirement. And so we are trying to invest in that, and $100,000 is a large amount, but a small amount to our total obligation. So if we don't contribute every year, we'll never get there. And that's, that number is determined through the Mass State Accounting System, and we get that through our town accountant. Any questions?
Nope.
No.
Okay, Article 13, this transfer of monies from the CPA account, and that's traditional. They have 3 different factors within CPC where money gets allocated each year, and they've broken those out for allocation as to how the dollars get invested. Any questions?
No.
No.
Okay, Article 13, and this is 13B, again, community preservation, $15,000, annual revenues for the administrative costs of implementing and executing the CPA funds, CPC funds, I should say. Any questions?
No, sir.
Okay,
One quick question. Is that a fixed number, or does that vary according to how much is in those accounts?
I believe that was their request, correct?
That was their request.
Yeah, their estimate as to what they need. Okay. Article 13C is $9,500, again, community preservation for historic resources to fund purchase and installation of granite posts, which should donated plaques, donated is a key word, be attached to indicate the sites of the 4 original public schools in Upton. And that's a request, and that will be executed and followed through by the Historic Commission along with CPC. Any questions?
Nope.
Okay, Article 13D, again, the CPA reserve account to acquire jointly with Mass Department of Conservation and Recreation to develop 46.8 acres off Mechanic Fowler on Warren Street. This is private property. It will be acquired with the $250,000 from Mass Resources, Conservation Resource, and the town of Upton contributing the balance. That article is, I believe, I don't see the amount. I believe the amount for Upton's donated is 100 and something thousand,
It's
correct?
113,000. They haven't specified the amount yet.
Okay.
They need, the CPC needs to get together and vote that officially.
All right.
But right now, they're slating about 113,000 for
Mhm.
this acquisition.
And again, this is develop a trail and take ownership, and it would be, is this through Metacomet or one of the other trusts?
No,
does
this is working with DCR.
Okay, yep, Mass DCR will contribute, yep, okay. So they're looking for the town to give 113,000 of the 250 from the state to make the purchase. Any questions?
I think it's in addition to the 250?
Yes,
In addition,
right.
113, is that
Yeah.
right? Okay.
Mhm.
Right, so
I
the
guess-
total cost would be 363.
363,
Yeah.
right. I guess a quick question, we're gonna have our financial meeting with FinCom coming up at the end of the month. Will somebody be there to elaborate on that article? Kind of go
We
over
can
some
I can certainly
some
invite them.
finer points?
Yeah.
So at the joint meeting you are requesting?
Yeah, under the last conservation restriction, there was a long list of the do's and don'ts. So if we're gonna exercise this and spend that money, it'd be nice to see exactly what the do's and don'ts are, with respect to the property.
I believe they've listed quite a bit of it here in their documentation that went with it, but I don't see a problem asking both members of the land stewardship and somebody from CPC to be present, yeah.
Okay.
Because it is 113,000. As I always say, and it's not popular, it comes off the tax rolls. Okay, Article 14 is $20,000 the Board of Assessors is asking for, and that's expenditures for the senior work-off program. That puts a ceiling on the senior work-off program as to how much money can be utilized for that process. As you know, seniors are allowed through a process to volunteer work to the town that reduces their tax levy, and that $20,000 is the funding for that process. Are there any questions?
No.
No.
Might be a teacher in the audience, I can't say, is there any questions? Okay, Article 15 is $21,800 from the Board of Assessors for measure and list services. We have a member of the Board of Assessors here, and $11,000 or any of the sum for future recertification. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but the assessors need to recertify, and there is a process they have to go through on every so many years to be qualified to do the assessment process, and that's the funds for that. Questions?
How is that money spent? Is that certification, that's not map service, that's actually for the people that are assessors?
Because I know Glenn will know it if I speak without. So what is happening is the 21,800 is the last year of the contract that we have to do a full measure and list, which our vendor has gone out and looked at every piece of property in the town.
Okay.
And this is the third year, the last year that they have to do it. So they'll finish the last third of the town this year. And we're required by Mass General Law to do that every 9 years. So this will finish that up. The $11,000, we're required to do a certification, a full certification every 5 years. It used to be 3 years, they changed it to 5 years. And we anticipate that that will cost about $55,000, so we're asking for $11,000 every year. So when the 5th year comes, we have the $55,000 to actually pay for that certification, and we're not coming and asking for $55,000 in 1 year.
Okay.
Thanks. Okay, Article 16, that's $5,000 appropriated to the Concom for them to use as they deem necessary for any actions of their committee. Any questions? None? Okay. Article 17, I'm going to defer this to Derek. It's $160,000 for purchase of vehicle, and you can explain the rationale for the capital being now.
Sure, so this truck, 24, is a 5-ton dump. It's been slated for replacement the last couple of years under the capital improvement plan. We held off in the fall, given the transition of Vin Roy to now Dennis Westgate. Both of them have recommended the replacement. Their mechanic has recommended its replacement. So what we'd like to do is try to program the replacement this summer so that we're ready for the winter. The concern would be that if we wait until mid-November, that this truck, we may not be able to get it in time for to push snow in the winter. So again, I know it goes against our policy of capital investments in annual town meeting and usually defer to the fall, but I just at least like consideration to at least have a discussion about this.
Are we raising, appropriating, or is this free cash?
We can certainly use free cash.
Because I kind of see both in there.
That's how the card will be written, but
Right.
the warrant will explain both, yeah. Yeah. I guess next Wednesday we'll determine how that will work with the FinCom.
Yeah, we would recommend using free cash.
Mhm.
And if you don't mind, can you put the VIN number instead of the truck number?
Sure.
Because I've known before that we've
Okay.
replaced trucks and they've just changed truck numbers instead of actually getting rid of them, so.
And I think in the past, we had asked for a spec as well. Do we know what would be buying basically the same make model truck? Just obviously brand new?
Okay.
Okay? All right, Article 18, again, the other post-employment benefits, it's $25,000 do an actuarial study, and I should turn this over to Derek, I guess. Basically, it is so we can get an analysis of what our real debt obligation's gonna be and how to work through it, so.
Right, so we have to do this, we're required under GASB 74 and 75 to do an actuarial study of our current liability, OPEB liabilities, and our future OPEB liabilities, so that we could get a new ARC, which is our annual required contribution, in order to contribute this. So the cost over this year, next year is gonna be about $25,000 to meet that federal obligation.
All right, Article 19, I'll let Steve, why don't you handle it? You were the one that initiated this to a change of the restructure of
Okay.
capital budget.
Yes, I think we had discussed this a couple of months back, and this is something that, it came to my attention that there were no appointments held by the Board of Selectmen for a Capital Budget Committee. And in light of the fact the Capital Budget Committee now is weighing in on all items over $25,000, they're gonna have a much more important role in our planning and will make recommendation on, say, vehicles, whereas in the past they did not, typically did not anyways. So this is something where we're just gonna restructure how the appointments are made with regard to the Capital Budget Committee, where our board now will hold 3 appointments, whereas in the past we had none.
Okay, any
So,
questions?
If it's not too late to make a change, I would like to change it from a 4-year term to a 3-year term to match the number of people you have with staggering terms.
Okay, yeah.
Derek, you were going to say something?
No, he was reading, Gary was reading my mind, so yeah,
Okay.
it's just the same.
All right, gentlemen? Okay, Article 20 is $3,500 for the Board of Assessors for software permitting program. Any questions?
None.
None?
No.
Okay. Article 21, to accept Kiwanis Beach Road. I'll turn this over to Town Manager again. I know you've been working on this extensively.
Right, so this has been, I think, a long time coming. The owners who have, the current owner of the land that abuts Kiwanis Beach Road is the owner that had provided that easement years ago. And so the family's taking over the land, and they've asked the town to go from an easement into the town taking over as a public way, Kiwanis Beach Road. So we're working very closely with the planning board. They're gonna hold a public hearing relative to this subject. We already have the engineering firm has already submitted a layout. There's gonna be a site visitor layout. DPW director's also involved, and a highway superintendent is also involved to ensure that what we're taking over will meet the standards which are currently in our bylaws.
Okay, gentlemen?
I did have something quick on that. I think in the past, has Dennis had a chance to look at the asphalt? I know there was a question in regard to what shape the road was in. And then I think we talked about this once before, were the other residents, I think we had talked about this regarding, were they on board as well as far as the road being accepted?
The planning board has to notify all the abutters, so
Okay.
they'll certainly be notified. Dennis and John Johnson will be accompanying the planning board members who attend and the engineering firm on the site visit to walk the layout of the land once it's scheduled. It's gonna be coming up in the next couple of weeks, but I'll follow up with Dennis to make sure that they look at the asphalt.
Okay.
It's not under snow.
Right.
Yeah, okay. The Article 22 is to deal with the inflationary aspect of eligibility for income and assets exemptions through the Board of Assessors. Basically, that's to protect people, so as inflation changes, the exemptions aren't impacted severely. Any questions on that, gentlemen?
No,
Okay. All right, Article 23 is the planning board is adding a new section in the zoning bylaws to control and regulate time, place, and manner of medical marijuana dispensaries. There is a very comprehensive, is it on the website, may I ask? Yet, they haven't finalized it, right? Okay. Okay.
We can get it on the website.
Basically, at the last town meeting, there was a great deal of confusion. People thought we were voting on the issue itself. All we asked for was a moratorium. And as a result of the moratorium, this has given the planning board an opportunity to go in and do due diligence and research on this. And at this point, they have a zoning bylaw change, which they will be proposing at the town meeting for the regulation and dispensing of marijuana. And as we know, it's a new law, but there's a lot of caveats to it that need to be addressed.
And the planning board's done a good job. They've reached out to all the departments, asked for their input, and other boards and committees as well, to try to ensure that we have as much input in this process as possible.
Gentlemen, do we have any questions on this?
I don't.
No?
I gotta read
Okay.
it.
All right. Article 24, and this is when it starts to get complex because there's quite a few personnel bylaw changes here. So I'll just try and paraphrase them. Derek, maybe I'll turn it over to you. It's got to do with military leave, which both Derek and I are well familiar with. You still are, by the way.
So I am.
So please.
So the Chief Bradley, he met with the personnel board approximately about a month ago, and proposed the personnel board consider amending the personnel bylaw to include an adoption of Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 33, Section 59, which in summary provides an additional 17 days to those individuals that work for the town, military days, for when on military leave. Chief Bradley has at least 2, could be 3 members that are currently in the Army National Guard. They would benefit from this greatly because of the type of schedule that they're on, this 4-2 schedule, or 4 days on, 2 days off. And oftentimes, when you have that type of schedule and you have to go away on your drill weekend, you're taking your own personal time while you're away. And so this would afford them 17 days to use at their leisure for when they're in military service status.
We had spoke about this earlier. Those would be paid days?
Those would be paid days, much like vacation days. That's right.
Okay. And I guess my concern would be, how will that impact the budget, roughly speaking? Do we have any sort of
I don't want to give you an exact number. The overtime line item will go up slightly, but the chief says that he has to cover those shifts anyways. So he did say there'd be a slight, and I think it was around $5,000-$6,000 of overtime costs associated with this.
I thought he already included that in his budget.
He did include it in his,
Yeah.
oh yeah, he
Already
included that
included
in his
that.
budget proposal. That's right, that's right. That's not in addition to what he's already talked about. That's right.
Okay. All right, Article 25, this is to establish a stabilization fund for the Mendon Upton Regional School District, and as I understand it, the stabilization fund would be on the line item, would be a line item within their total budget, and it would be proportionate to the allocation town spend. So basically, we would pay 54, they'd pay 46, or something close to that number. I raised the question to the town manager. I would like to insert that it be exclusive of the town-owned properties. And the reason I say that, and being transparent, if Upton's gonna pay 54% of the budget, I don't think it's even legal to use that money to appropriate to fix up Clough School in another town with the greater allocation of funds coming from Upton. So if we pay 54% of that budget, it should go to a facility that's used by Upton students. And I believe the law is written that way as part of the district charter. So I'd like to see if it's proper to put in exclusive of town-owned schools. Because Mendon owns Clough, we own Memorial. The district uses Memorial and covers the cost of operation, but a major stabilization repair, I don't think that stabilization fund should be used to fix in regional towns. You understand what I'm
Do
saying?
you know where they're even gonna get the money for the
It's
stabilization?
gonna be within their budget. It's gonna, and when you vote the district budget, you vote one number. So it will be a line item within their operational, well, I won't say operation, within their budget. So if the district asks for X dollars, that's stabilization. So if they opt to put in 100,000, they opt to put in 200. When it comes to budget review time, I think it's prudent of the towns to go in their budget and say, well, why are you asking stabilization? I think the process makes sense. You put in stabilization, you don't hit the towns with, we need $5 million to fix the roofs in all the schools. This way, you have money allocated as the town has a stabilization.
Yeah.
It's just
Should we
rainy
invite
day.
him to come to the joint committee?
It's your pleasure, gentlemen.
I don't know if
Yeah.
there's like more questions, if there's gonna be like a max, how much they're gonna have in that account.
Either that, or we
What
can
happens
ask the
if
town manager
If we
to
run into
give us.
hard times, or do we have to contribute to this? Or-
Yeah, I would say that, that I can certainly follow up with any questions that you have.
Or a school committee member, not to interrupt, but
Or if,
Yeah.
I think maybe more appropriate at our April 3rd meeting, if you want them to come in, I can invite them to come in and talk directly to the board about that as well.
Are they presenting at the end of this month?
The district's voted its budget already.
I saw that.
As a district, yeah.
I saw that, yeah. I personally am not a big fan of pre-tax. And basically, you're taxing the people on something and you're putting it away. So I personally, I don't like it. We have E&D money for the school district, so they typically always have excess money in their budget. We fund one number, but now not only are we gonna be funding that one number, but we're basically prepaying for some other entity, whatever that is. If you have a building that needs a roof, bring it forward, let the people vote on a roof. But I don't like pre-taxing the people, so I don't like it myself.
I have a difference of opinion.
I know you do, so I'll.
My opinion
turn it back
is
to you.
if the roof's gonna cost $2.5 million, I don't want Upton getting $1 million bill one year, all of a sudden. I'd rather be paying, it's the same reason you have savings accounts at home. You put a little away, and then when it comes, you've got the money to address it. It's a softer hit to the town. We've had, and again, I know I can't stop myself, but we've had years when we've had hardship, and we've been hit with some bills that were, oh my God, how are we gonna pay this? And as a result, we have to either reduce services or something to offset the cost. And I would hate to have that happen should the state condemn the roof at the high school or something.
I just think
I'll
it
make
needs
up.
to be more definition of what they're gonna consider stabilization, because
that's
they
fair
can go
to
out
ask,
and use
yeah.
this on a field, and
Fair
they
to
don't
ask.
need the roof.
Right, and
That's
that's
a
my
perfect
point, is that
example, yeah.
if they're gonna do a capital project and it's something that maybe somebody normally wouldn't vote for. But now all of a sudden, because that fund grows and it becomes $500,000 or $1 million or more, again, the people will have no say in how that money's spent. So that's the part I don't like. I mean, I believe you tax it when you need it, you give it back when you don't need it. That's just my opinion.
Well, that's why we elect the school committee, but I won't get
Yeah.
into it. Okay, can we ask that somebody, a school committee member or the superintendent, or Jay Byer?
Sure. Yeah.
Somebody to answer these questions. They're all valid, certainly. Okay, Article 26, to establish and appropriate the special injury leave indemnity payment, and this gets complex too. It's, again, we get into the personnel and it gets convoluted, so Derek, I'll throw it to you. You'll probably do a better job.
Sure, so, this article, requests to create a special account, for those individuals that are on 111F. So 111F is, a special status for public safety officials who go out injured on duty. And, what this account does is when these individuals are out on injured on duty, the town is paying these individuals to be out. But at the same time, the town is also being reimbursed by our insurance company for these individuals being out. So on our side of the ledger, we're drawing down from our wages account, and we could be going to deficit, especially as we get towards the end of the fiscal year, and we have no way to replace that money. So by doing this, when we take the insurance money, we can take the insurance money that they're actually paying us to recover our costs. And so we would place this money in the special account to cover those individuals who are out on 111F.
So basically, instead of taking by town process, instead of the money going to the general fund, it goes specific to that to offset the cost. So we're not running a deficit in one line item in the general fund requiring the money.
That's right, because we have to pay that money, and we're burning through our wages line item when these folks are on 111F.
So it would go to that particular line item, whatever it may be,
That's
whichever
right.
department it may be.
That's right.
And you're gonna build this fund through insurance claims?
That's how we'll reimburse ourselves through the insurance claims into this
Is there like a
fund.
certain amount that we have to put in here to begin with?
I don't think so, but that's a good question, I can follow up. I don't think so, though.
Any other questions on that?
I don't-
Okay. Article 27 is $8,500 to hire a consultant to investigate and provide a condition report on the roofs of the police and fire station. First words out of my mouth is, that seems like a lot of money to just say we need a roof.
No, that's what I was gonna say. You really need a consultant to tell you you need a roof.
Do you want me to speak to this?
Yeah, it was recommended by the police chief, and we added that in order for the consultant to come out to get more bang for the dollar, we figured we'd include both roofs. And because of the special roof that the police station have with the rubber membrane and exactly what needs to be done to replace that, police chief felt we needed a consultant. And I asked around to area counterparts to find out which would be a good company, and this Gale Associates that submitted the amount came back to us for the 8,500, and we get both, because I believe the fire station is also having some issues with their roof as well. So we'll at least know how much it will cost and exactly what needs to be done, versus just estimating it and having a vendor come in and bid it.
I kind of echo your concerns. It's just $8,500 is an awful lot of money to basically have an estimate done, is really what's gonna happen.
They're gonna be able to tell us, and I'm not saying that you're incorrect. I'll be more than happy to share the report, the consultant report that he gave us on what it's going to specify, on what the conditions report would give us.
John? Okay.
I agree with you guys, it's just a lot of money for,
Well, okay, thank you. We can look into that a little further, I guess. Article 28, this is the result of the Harvey Trask bequeath trust. Harvey Trask, as you know, was born and raised in Upton. His mother was a teacher, librarian. Harvey's heart was in the town of Upton, and as part of his will and trust, he bequeathed land, 2 parcels of land to the town of Upton. Its primary use is for recreation. Its secondary use is for education, and the trust is fairly specific as to its use, but the town, through due process, needs to accept this, and I believe all the legal requirements have pretty much been satisfied. This is just a process of the town saying, yes, we want to accept it. And, you know, those that knew Harvey will understand his heart was in this one. It's beautiful land, by the way. It's probably 4 feet of topsoil. It's gorgeous. So, okay, Article 29 is $25,000 for a comprehensive plan, a strategic plan for fire and EMS. Derek, I'll turn it over to you. I believe this came through the advisory board as well, so.
Right, so an RFP was issued back in November time period to request for proposals for a consultant firm to come in and work with our fire department in the community alike to develop a strategic plan for our fire EMS combination department. After the Fire and EMS Advisory Committee held 2 sessions of vetting the 4 proposals, they landed on one proposal at a cost of $25,000. So they are requesting to fund that initial proposal. The chairperson has reached out to that firm, asked if that cost proposal is still valid, and the answer, from what I was told, is yes, and that they'd be willing to wait for town meeting to execute an agreement.
Okay, gentlemen, I know we've been involved. Any comments?
Yeah, we discussed this, I think, a few months ago when we basically, I suppose, reinstated the Fire and EMS Advisory Board. I particularly am not a big fan of studies. I really don't like spending the money. I'm not sure how you gentlemen feel about it, but, you know, to me, we have plenty of management in that department, and we have a Fire and EMS Advisory Board, so, again, I don't like spending that $25,000 myself.
this bid came in a lot higher than I expected. And I know this whole thing kind of changed from what we originally wanted. We wanted a management study, and it's really expanded to a study of the whole department. So,
Yeah, right, exactly. I'm not sure that the focus is what I'm actually looking for. I'm not sure that the focus is really there. But again,
Gentlemen, at your pleasure. Are you saying, are we basically saying you want to pull the article?
maybe we should meet with the Fire EMS
Well,
Association.
Do you want to defer this? What's the close for the warrant?
April 3rd.
April 3rd, so we will not be meeting well, we will be posted for next Wednesday. So
Right, so the next
Wednesday's the final
meeting that
action.
we meet will be April 3rd to we've scheduled to finalize the warrant. So any changes can be made on that evening, April 3rd.
But in fairness to you, you need time. We should try and just complete this warrant by next Wednesday.
Yeah, I mean, any questions that you have, I would need advance notice. I
Right.
hope to answer all your questions no later than April 3rd.
Right. So, gentlemen,
I mean, perhaps
I'll
we could.
stand removed on this because to your pleasure.
Because, I mean, we have another $39,000 study coming up later on. And I don't think, personally, I'm gonna fund both of them. I'm gonna pick one or the other.
So, I will accept motion. Does one of you want to make motion to withdraw the article?
I mean, we have two ways, we could do it that way, or we could, it's your call, Selectman Darby.
I'll make a motion to withdraw the article.
I would second the motion.
It carries majority action of the board. I will abstain. Okay. The next one, and because, Derek, I'm gonna do this to you, but because it's 3.5 pages long, Article 30 on the personnel changes. And first of all, I wanna compliment the Personnel Board. I know they've done extensive work on this, working with the town manager. There's a lot to it, but they've certainly done their homework. So, by the way, we are impressed with the Personnel Board's actions. They do a good job. So, I hear that all the time. So, Derek, would you please try and give us the
Sure.
condensed version, as they say?
Sure. So there's a couple pieces to the proposal, as you have it in front of you this evening. Let me start by, well, first recognizing the good work of the Personnel Board. They've done a lot of work over the last 6 months, just going through it line by line, the personnel bylaw. So what's in front of you right now is they looked at the town's bonus program and longevity program. So let me start by saying that they are recommending the Personnel Board that we strike the meritorious bonus program in its entirety. Historically, it hasn't been used all that much, and quite frankly, I don't want to speak for the Personnel Board, but I think that they feel like they're in an unusual position to make a recommendation on a bonus when they don't really know these individuals. And then they looked at the longevity program, formerly known as the seniority program, and trying to align, the proposal in front of you this evening is trying to align this longevity program with all of our collective bargaining agreements. So we have 4 unions that have longevity in their CBAs, but their longevity is very different than what is currently in the bylaw. The current calculation is based upon a person at year 5, 10, 15, and 20, they get 1.5% of their base salary. That's their longevity bonus. So for example, if somebody's had 10 years, they would get, and they get about $50,000 a year, they get about $750. So the proposal here is to eliminate the 5-year mark in longevity and just start at the 10-year mark. And that each subsequent year after 10 years, based upon the table that's in front of you, that individual would get a longevity stipend like their union counterparts. An analysis was done by Sandy, and when we look at the analysis over the next 5 years, the town will be saving a little bit of money, about $2,500 over a 5-year period. I mean, you break that out, it's only $500 a year we're saving. But most importantly, it allows equity amongst all of our employees. And I think that's really the driving factor behind this. So we have equity amongst the union employees and the non-union employees. So that's one, those are their 2 main recommendations. I think I'm missing one though. The medical exam process has been changed. There was a lot of conversations over who gets what type of medical exam. And we've spent a lot of money this past year on folks that don't need some of these types of exams. So the Personnel Board took that into consideration and have made some modifications that, based upon the type of employee we're trying to hire and the requirements specifically for that type of classification.
Okay, very comprehensive. Obviously, a lot of work was done. Gary, any questions?
Is there anything about drug testing in this pre-employment stuff? I didn't see anything.
Yeah, we do, we
Okay.
drug screen all employees. Every employee before they're hired, we do a drug screen.
That's it.
Steve? Okay, good. Article 31, this is to accept Blueberry Lane and Dogwood Drive, 2 new areas within the town of Upton, and for the town to accept the roadways, and that's a process similar to Kiwanis Beach Road. This is standard operational procedure when new developments are put in, the planning board controls them, make sure they meet town requirements, they're up to town specs, the roads have to be constructed as the town would construct under our bylaw requirements, and this is just being brought forward to accept. Any questions? None, okay. Article 32 is $35,000 to fund a recreation master plan. This is sponsored by the RecCom, a long-term, short and long-term for recreation resources. And did you, I'll turn this to you again because you spoke to the RecCom on this.
I spoke to the Recreation Director.
Right.
So currently, the Recreation Commission has an RFP out. It's due the first week of April. They're soliciting proposals from vendors to come to the town of Upton to do a master plan for their recreational resources. Part of that would include looking at Kiwanis Beach and what they're trying to accomplish there. At the same time, looking at the new land and how the trash land had donated and trying to determine what's the best use for that land as well, amongst other types of services and activities that they should consider. So they put in the RFP that it would be funded up to $35,000. So they have submitted an article to request $35,000 at the annual town meeting to fund this study.
Well, my concern is, and they're an elected board, so I don't want to overrule them, I've never done that, but I'd like to have consideration, why doesn't this come out of the revolving account where their revenue is invested in? They should be self-operational, and if they're going to spend $35,000, why appropriate from taxation outside the revolving account? We just had an article, and I'm not being critical of them, but they had $200,000 that was raised to. I mean, what is in that revolving account? And if they've got $300-some odd thousand, I'm making up a number. I don't see the purpose in taking from taxation $35,000. Just an opinion. And I know you'll agree with me.
Absolutely.
We know we're on this one.
Yes, Chairman, you have my support.
Okay, Gary?
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, that fund needs to be self-supporting. That's a lot of money to spend. As it is, a revolving fund like that, really, the capital is there. The town's already paid for the capital. So they're running that, basically, the expenses, the heavy expenses have already been paid for. So something like this should definitely come out of revolving funds.
Well,
I agree too.
Could we ask them as a courtesy? I would ask we don't remove this. They may have strong justification, but could you ask them if they want to attend next Wednesday or give us a rationale?
Sure. I can do both.
Because it's going to be asked on the town floor if we don't ask it now. Okay, and finally is Article 33, which is $64,300, Fund 2512, whatever that is, sale of real estate fund to fund payment of indebtedness regarding Stephens. And I don't know the difference between Stephens 1, 2, or 3. I certainly know what Stephens is. So
This is no cost to the taxpayer. This is basically just transferring that $64,300 from that fund account over to the general account so we can pay for that debt this year.
okay,
No cost to the taxpayer.
that's always good to hear. Yes?
That's good to hear. I guess the one quick question is, where did that $64,300 come from?
From the sale, again, I don't have any history on this
Yeah.
property, but it's from the sale of the real estate at Stephens.
Yeah. Yeah. Stephens was, God, that the one that passed by 3 votes? No, wrong one. Okay.
How much
That
money,
was Sweet Williams.
It was Sweet William was
you
3.
know how much money's in this account?
Stephens
total?
goes back further, yes.
Do you know how much money's in that account total? And like how much we still owe?
No, I don't know what the indebtedness is. I know we're close to paying off Stephens.
It is, I think it's either, I think next year's the last payment.
Yeah, I mixed up Sweet Williams Farm. That's a lot more. Yeah. So, that concludes a review of the warrant. I'd ask, are there any questions?
I have none at this point.
Gary?
No, sir?
Derek, anything?
No, I just wanted to report that the Chapter 90
Excuse me.
funding for this year is about $314,000.
Yeah, okay.
Matalian's point.
Okay. Are there any questions from the general audience? Marcia? Excuse me.
When we're talking about allocating money in advance
Once it's district appropriate, the funds are appropriated to the district, it's on the management of the district. The town has no recourse to go back and, its town meeting vote is what it is.
So we can't just allocate it in a general fund?
No.
Right.
School district is autonomous to our government. They work as a separate entity. Any other questions? Okay, there being none, the Board of Selectmen is going to go into executive session under Mass General Law, Chapter 38, Section 21, Exception 3, to discuss strategy sessions with respect to collective bargaining. Chair declares an open meeting will have a detrimental effect on town's bargaining position. We are in executive session. Thank you, everyone.